For the next one, I'd like to call our stated clerk resource staff person, Steve Stuchet, up to give us a presentation on boundary training for sessions.
Thank you. As of July 2023, the Book of Order has included the following. You can see it on the screen. G30106, Administration of Mission. Councils higher than the session may provide examples of policies and procedures that may be gathered into advisory handbooks. These examples illumine practices required by the Constitution, but left to councils for specific implementation. All councils, and a council is the session, presbytery, synod, general assembly, shall adopt and implement the following policies, and we've heard about some of these today: sexual misconduct policy, harassment policy, child and youth protection policy, and an anti-racism policy. Then there is this. Each council's policy shall include requirements for boundary training, which includes the topic of sexual misconduct and child abuse prevention training for its members at least every 36 months. Each council. What are councils, everybody? Sessions, presbytery, synod, general assembly. That means each council, including the session, has to have these policies. That means as of the Book of Order taking effect in July 2023, elders on session were supposed to have boundary training and child abuse sexual prevention training, and you have to take it every 3 years. If you serve 2 terms on session, you have to take it twice. And before people raise their hands, no, you are not in violation right now, even though all of this went into effect in July of 2023, because the Presbytery has been working out negotiations that you know about now for our insurance. And so until that was resolved, we didn't know with whom we could work. And so if you're able to do it by the end of this year with what I'm about to offer, that's great, but it will not be held against you if you don't. This time next year, I'll be telling you it's 2025, and by December 31st, 2025, everyone required had better do this, but we'll get to that in a moment. So we are in conversations, deep conversations with an organization called Ministry Safe. And we became aware of those because of the new insurers we have, Guide One and Brown & Brown, through the New Jersey Presbytery's Insurance Partnership. The founder and president of Ministry Safe is a national expert and attorney on matters of sexual abuse prevention. And he and his company are working with nearly every denomination in the United States. In discussion with Ministry Safe, here are some of the things we are working with them, negotiating with them on your behalf. Highlands Presbytery is a hub for the Presbytery. That means in this case, we are accountable just as you are accountable. We are going to be sued if you are sued, because it's our job to make sure you do the things that the denomination requires you to do. And so if something happens in your congregation, whatever it is, there's a good chance, a very good chance, the Presbytery will be sued, because someone will say, why didn't the Presbytery make sure this person did the training? And then our attorneys will hash that out. So we are a hub in that we have to be able to see how you're doing and what you're doing, because if something happens, we have to explain why we weren't paying attention. Because of this relationship, we are looking for, and I think we have figured out a way to have a centralized system that will allow us to keep track from the 10,000-foot view of what your congregation is doing. We won't know all the things you have to do. We won't know all the people who are elders. We don't know when they were elected, anything, but we would be able to say these people took the test. We are negotiating that the presbytery will pay the annual subscription fee, which at this point is $400 per church. The presbytery will cover that in a fee we are negotiating with Ministry Safe so that it doesn't come to that for your congregation and the presbytery is not paying $400 times 78, which would probably boost your per capita up quite a bit. What would happen is the presbytery would cover the annual subscription fee for all of its 78 member churches. And then you as a congregation would have two options. One, you could cover the cost for your elders who have to take the exam. And I can tell you at least the sexual abuse prevention training is $8 as I speak. So it'd be $8 per person. There may be other tests, and I'll get to that in a moment, but either the church could do that or a church would have the power to say, this is something we ask of you as an elder. And it would be up, each congregation would make that decision for itself. The biggest outlay for the churches would be year one, saying we start with January 2025. And that's because every single elder on session would have to do this training so that you would be in compliance. But in 2026, only a third of your session would, because you're only replacing a third of your people, assuming normal tradition, rotation. So for those of you that were unaware that elders had to do this, and this is coming as a surprise, even if you had a session of 20 people, you're only looking at approximately 20 times 8 for year one. Again, we have to see what other tests might be required. What I can tell you is I have been given access to a lot of the different trainings and tests. And with this little presbytery meeting thing coming up, I haven't been able to do as many as I'd like, but I can tell you I did do the child sexual abuse prevention training. And the video is about an hour. It is recorded in front of a live audience. So there's a person like me standing here and talking, and then occasional PowerPoint slides. It's not, it's not an Oscar-winning video, but it's all well done. It's very informative. I certainly learned a lot, and I've done a lot of child sexual abuse prevention training, so it was good to learn new things. The test itself is 25 questions, and if you were paying attention to the video, you didn't have to be taking copious notes. If you're paying attention, you should be fine passing with 75%. If you weren't paying attention, I'm not sure what to tell you. You might just have to take the test again. But the nice thing about this system is I took the test and it marks it on a screen, and Sonia, whoever Sonia is, there she is right in front of me. She would be able to see, as would I, who has taken it so that we can keep track. Among the other trainings that we are considering, and we just I have to watch them to see what's most relevant, peer-to-peer sexual abuse training, which I'm learning is a much greater problem than people understood or identified in the past. And that is, for example, young adults who are pressuring other young adults. So the power dynamic, there is a power dynamic, but it's different than an adult with a child or a pastor and a member. It's young adults and young adults, and there are other power dynamics at work. But unfortunately, we know that people are not acting in the most appropriate ways. And so there are trainings available so that you can start to identify people who are exhibiting either being abused or the abuser, or so that you can train the people in your congregation so that they know what to look for. Since not everyone will be required to do it, you may be the person giving this training. There's a child safety workshop, reporting child sexual abuse, third-party use of facilities, which is a question we get a lot at the Presbytery, sexual harassment training for supervisors, and sexual harassment training for staff members. And that actually does not cover all of the trainings, but those are the trainings I plan to do over the next couple of months. Once some of these details are hammered out, these trainings would be the minimum standard. It would apply to everybody. In my negotiations, this has not been, some of you are under Brown and God one, and some of you aren't. My negotiation with them has been, if anybody is sued, we're going to be sued. And so you're going to be responsible anyway. So you might as well make sure that all of our churches have access to this training. But if you're working with a different insurer, or you decide you want to work with a different training provider, you can do that, but you have to meet our standards. So you'll have to say, we'd use something else. This is what we did. We may have to investigate and make sure it was in compliance, but it won't be simply the Old West where you can just do whatever you want. It does have to meet some standards. We're providing what we consider to be the best choice. If you're doing something else, you're going to have to explain it. For those who are clerks of session who are watching this or are here now, you will hear at our clerk of session workshop, which is coming up in just a few weeks, that there are going to be some changes to the minute review form because of this. And what I will be proposing is, well, propose is a little weak, actually. This is what will be expected, is that when you are informed that someone in your congregation has done this training, I should say someone on your session has, you'll have to record that month. And then at the end of the year, you'll have a cumulative list of everybody in 2025 who has done that. For those of you who are wondering why, since we'll have access to that information, again, all I will know is that so many people from a church took this training. But I don't know who all of your elders are. I don't even know what the size of your session is. So you have to keep track, because if you are sued, you have to demonstrate you did everything you could to make sure people were trained. And so you'll want to keep a running list of who is compliant. On October 17th at 7:30 via Zoom, there is going to be a meeting with the founder and owner of Ministry Safe, Gregory Love, and he's going to be walking through what is involved in this process. And by then we should have worked out a lot of the details so that you'll know exactly what you're responsible for, or at least closer to. Again, you can be sure the one $8 test you'll be doing. It's just with additional ones we feel you have to do. So watch for more information, and if you're so inclined, October 17th at 7:30. Can I ask some questions, Mr. Martin?
If you like.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Steve. I have a question online.
Go for it.
So I'm
Oh,
it's Lisa.
Can you just tell us who you are real quick?
Yeah, hi, it's Lisa Coulter. I'm from Old Greenwich Presbyterian. We actually already have Ministry Safe. We actually just started using it ourselves in like the last month. So we have an account already that we've already paid the $400 for. So would we have to redo everything we've already done? Should we hold off, or?
That's a very good question. I have been trying to speak to Mr. Love for a couple of days, and I'll run that by him and his problem solver and see what we can do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for getting on top of this.
You're welcome.
No.
Steve, the portion where the clerk has to record the names of people who completed the courses, is that beginning in 2025 and part of the review in 2026, or what is it right now?
The first option. So people will be expected to start recording January 1st. And when we receive your minutes for 2025, those names should be included. And that'll be spelled out on the form.
Hello, I'm Catherine Scott Kirshner, a minister member from the Presbyterian Church of Sussex. And my question is, would it be okay or an idea to bring the session together, watch the video together, and then have everyone take the test on their own? Be like, everyone show up for an hour and a half. We're going to do this training together. Would that be a possibility? But everyone takes their own test separately, quietly. Is that a possibility?
That is, if you go through all the videos at the very end, actually each slide will say, I verified that I have watched all of these or have done the training in the past. And so once you check that, the test comes up. So yes, if you all watched it together and then everybody just checks that box, they should be good.
Thank you.
Right, they'd have to log in individually.
We have questions online, Steve.
Okay, Wendy.
Hi, Steve, Wendy Deutsch, Clerk of Session, Morristown. I have an email that says boundary awareness training, $58. I wouldn't have mentioned it except you said $8. So is this more inclusive of every test?
I have no idea. I can only tell you that the test is $8 for that particular.
Steve, I can answer that. This is Jean.
Oh,
What Wendy's talking about is the boundary training that we require of pastors, and that is $58.
Thank you.
And that is, if you want to take that now and you're not a pastor, you can do that through us, but it will cost you $58. So that is the present boundary training that we have.
Hi, Steve. This is Betsy Engelhardt from West Milford Presbyterian Church. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. We have been members of Ministry Safe for 4 years, so I'm very familiar with the program. In fact, if you have questions, I might be able to answer them. But of course, my question is, we've already paid our $400 for the year. What do we do about that? But more importantly, the great part about this program is that, yes, indeed, it tracks every single person that has taken the test when they completed the test. And then it will remind you that in 3 years, hey, these people on this particular date will be out of date and therefore must register. So it's a great tracking device. But my question would be, because we have a private account, I can see everything that's happening with West Milford Presbyterian Church. Now that would be encompassed under Highlands, would it be a Highlands account? And would all that tracking information only be available through Highlands, where me as an administrator at West Milford wouldn't be able to see who took the test, when it was taken, and when it would need to be renewed?
I will confirm with that. My understanding is that the church will have access to that information, but it'll be a kind of a master policy so that the presbytery also has access.
Okay.
Wouldn't be shut out.
All right. And then in answer to that other question, every single test has a fee associated with it. So the child prevention sexual misconduct is an $8 fee. If you choose any of the other training, it would have a separate fee associated.
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Great that you're already doing this and have been.
Oh, John, I believe John has a question.
Yes. John, we're Union Hill Presbyterian Church, Denville. You've talked about elders. What about, well, I see there's a question about deacons, but Sunday school teachers, youth group leaders?
At present, people who work with children have to have background checks, but the book of order has not changed to encompass them as well. It says councils. So even if it may be a great idea for your deacons to do it, you would just decide you want your deacons to do it and they would pay and take the test. But they are not obligated, and you aren't obligated to make sure they do, and we aren't obligated to track deacons. But ruling elders on session, that's who this applies to, the council.
Steve, may I say something also along that, to answer that question?
Please.
If your sexual misconduct or child protection policy says that they are required, then they should do that. But you need to check your own individual policy because some have included that in their policies.
Thank you, Jean.
Is there a mechanism by which, say, a church that wants to have their own account to avail themselves of the many different tests to sort of, kind of be ahead of the curve with regards to Book of Order? If we wanted to have our own account, do our own testing, is it easy enough for us to report to the Presbytery that the Book of Order requirements have been fulfilled?
I would have to give it some thought. On the face of it, it sounds like if you wanted to have your own account, et cetera, you could, just as you could have another insurer. But your minutes would have to reflect month by month who's done it, and at the end of the year, everybody who's done it that year. But I reserve the right to find out that isn't the way it works, but that's how I think it works.
Steve, Steve, thank you for your report, for your work on that. And Pete?